Brothers and sisters, the power of God can overcome any poverty. Miracles are here. Why does prosperity and miracles dominate African Christianity? Pastors are rich, but members remain poor. Today, we are asking hard questions. Not to mock the church, not to insult pastors, but to search for truth. Why is it that in Africa, Christianity is growing faster than anywhere else in the world, yet poverty remains deep among church members? Why do many pastors preach prosperity and miracles every week, while the people listening remain financially and socially stuck? Why are pastors driving luxury cars, while faithful members trek long distances to church, borrow money for offerings, and still struggle to survive? Is this the gospel of Jesus Christ or something else? Stay with me to watch this video to end. This message may challenge you, but it may also open your eyes. Before we continue, let me ask again. Why is it that in Africa, churches are full every week, miracles are shouted everywhere, prosperity is preached loudly, pastors celebrated like kings, yet the majority of the people sitting in those churches remain poor, frustrated, and stuck? This is not an attack. This is a real question. And it is a question many people are afraid to ask out loud. Because if you ask it, people say you are against God. If you ask it, people say you are jealous. If you ask it, people say you lack faith. But the question refuses to disappear. Why is Christianity exploding in numbers while economic freedom is not following at the same speed? To understand this, we must start from reality, not religion. From life, not the pulpit. Because people do not enter churches empty-minded. They enter churches already wounded. Africa is not a continent of laziness. It is a continent of effort without reward. People work hard and still struggle. People pray hard and still suffer. People study and still remain unemployed. People obey laws and still get punished, while the corrupt are rewarded. Yes, Pastor. But God sees the heart. Over time, this creates a dangerous mindset. The feeling that something unseen is blocking progress. When systems fail consistently, people stop believing in systems. When governments disappoint repeatedly, people stop expecting justice. When education does not guarantee opportunity, people start asking spiritual questions. Not because they are stupid, but because logic has failed them too many times. So people turn to God, not first for heaven, but for survival. Not first for holiness, but for relief. The church becomes more than a spiritual place. It becomes the last place of hope. And when hope is scarce, whoever controls hope controls people. This is where the conversation becomes uncomfortable. In environments where poverty is normal, messages about prosperity sound powerful. In environments where sickness is common, miracles sound attractive. In environments where people feel powerless, supernatural solutions feel like the only option left. When you cannot change your government, cannot change the economy, cannot change your opportunities, you begin to look for divine shortcuts. That is why prosperity preaching works. Not because people love money more than God, but because money represents escape. Escape from hunger, escape from shame, escape from dependence, escape from suffering. So when a preacher says God will lift you, people are not thinking about greed. They are thinking about dignity. Miracle preaching also works for the same reason. When hospitals are expensive, miracles feel cheaper. When doctors are unavailable, prayer feels accessible. When treatment is uncertain, prophecy feels confident. Miracle promises instant results in a slow, painful environment. But here is the tension. Here is the debate nobody wants to sit with. If miracles and prosperity messages are truly solving the problem, why does the problem remain? Why do the same people come back year after year with the same testimonies waiting to happen? This is where desperation plays a role. Desperation changes thinking. A desperate person does not analyze messages deeply. A desperate person looks for anything that offers hope. If one person testifies that something worked, thousands believe it can work for them. Even if that person is the exception, not the rule. Testimonies become few. One breakthrough story is repeated 100 times. The silent failures are never interviewed. The disappointed are told to wait more. The struggling are told to sow again. And because people do not want to look faithless, they remain quiet. Slowly, responsibility shifts. Poverty is no longer about systems, corruption, or bad policies. It becomes a spiritual attack. Failure becomes a lack of faith. Questions become rebellion. Thinking becomes dangerous. Obedience becomes more important than understanding. This is where faith begins to replace structure. Instead of asking how communities can organize economically, people are taught to pray harder. Instead of demanding accountability from leaders, people are taught to submit. This is not what God wants for us. Instead of learning skills and building institutions, people are told to wait for miracles. The church then becomes emotional relief, not transformation. People shout, cry, dance, fall, feel better, and return to the same reality on Monday. The pain is reduced temporarily, but the problem remains permanently. And yet, this is not because Africans are foolish. It is because pain makes people vulnerable. Long-term suffering lowers resistance. When life keeps beating you down, you grab whatever promises to lift you up. This is why prosperity and miracle preaching did not appear randomly. It grew from a real hunger. A hunger for change, a hunger for dignity, a hunger for control over life again. The tragedy is that this hunger can be redirected, reshaped, and sometimes exploited. So the issue is not faith. The issue is what kind of faith is being promoted. A faith that builds systems, responsibility, and long-term freedom, or a faith that keeps people emotionally hopeful but structurally dependent. This is the foundation of the debate. Because once hope becomes a product, it can be marketed. Once miracles become a business model, they can be sold. And once people stop questioning, power concentrates in the hands of a few. Why do miracles attract people faster than discipleship? The answer is not complicated and it is not mysterious. Miracles promise speed. Discipleship demands time. Miracles say something will change now. Discipleship says something will change slowly. In a continent like Africa, where people have waited too long for change, speed matters. Most people are already tired. Tired of waiting for government. Tired of waiting for opportunity. Tired of waiting for justice. So when they come to church, they are not looking for another long process. They are looking for relief. They are looking for evidence that something can happen quickly. Miracles speak to that desire. Discipleship does not. Discipleship talks about character, about discipline, about patience, about growth, about learning, about correction. These things are necessary, but they are not exciting. They do not produce instant testimonies. They do not make people shout. They do not trend. They do not fill halls quickly. Miracles do. A miracle can be announced in one sentence. A breakthrough can be declared in one prayer. A prophecy can be delivered in one moment. But discipleship takes months, sometimes years. And in a suffering environment, slow messages struggle to survive. There is also the issue of visibility. Miracles can be seen. Someone walks, someone shouts, someone testifies. Discipleship is invisible. You cannot clap for discipline. You cannot shout for consistency. You cannot easily celebrate quiet growth. So crowds respond to what they can see, not always to what they need. Another reason miracles grow faster is expectation. Many people now come to church already expecting an encounter, not a lesson. They want to feel something. They want to experience something. If nothing dramatic happens, they feel disappointed. Churches feel this pressure. Leaders feel this pressure. And gradually, messages begin to shift toward what people respond to. This does not always come from bad intentions. Sometimes it comes from survival. Churches want to grow. Leaders want relevance. And relevance today is often measured by numbers, reactions, and visibility. But there is a cost. When miracles become the main attraction, people begin to outsource responsibility. They wait for divine intervention instead of personal development. They wait for prophecy instead of planning. They wait for deliverance instead of discipline. Faith becomes a replacement for effort, not a partner with it. In the early church, miracles existed, but they did not replace teaching. Power existed, but it did not replace responsibility. In the book of Acts, signs followed the message, but the message remains central. Today, in many places, the signs have become the message. That shift changes how people grow. It produces believers who are hopeful but unprepared, excited but dependent, loyal but not grounded. So the question is not whether miracles are real. The question is whether miracles have taken the place of formation. Whether excitement has replaced maturity. Whether crowds have replaced disciples. This is why miracles attract faster than discipleship. Not because they are evil, but because they are easier. Easier to preach, easier to receive, easier to celebrate. But what is easier is not always what builds. And this naturally pushes the discussion forward. Because once miracles become the main attraction, another question follows quietly behind it. Who benefits the most from this system? And why does wealth begin to rise at the top while struggle remains at the bottom? Why do many pastors become wealthy while many members remain poor? This question is often misunderstood. People hear it as an attack. But it is not an attack, it is an observation. And observations deserve honest examination. In many parts of Africa, the church has become one of the strongest institutions in society. It gathers of people give regularly into one structure, resources naturally increase. Money itself is not evil. Growth itself is not wrong. The issue is direction and control. In most churches, money flows in one direction. From many people at the bottom, upward to a few people at the top. Decisions about that money are often made by a small circle. Spending is rarely questioned. Transparency is not common. And because the church is treated as sacred, normal accountability is discouraged. Members are taught to give sacrificially, to give consistently, to give even when it is painful. Giving is framed as faith. Questioning is framed as rebellion. Over time, people stop asking where the money goes. They focus only on giving more, hoping their own breakthrough will come next. Leadership, on the other hand, begins to experience comfort. Influence grows, access grows, lifestyle improves. Again, not always because of greed, but because there are no clear boundaries. When power and money meet without accountability, imbalance is almost guaranteed. Another factor is image. Many churches believe that visible wealth attracts belief. A successful looking pastor is seen as proof that the message works. So prosperity is not just preached, it is displayed. Cars become sermons, houses become testimonies, lifestyle becomes evidence. Members look at this and think, if it worked for him, it can work for me. But leadership income is stable and centralized. While members' income is unstable and scattered, the system benefits one side more consistently than the other. Members are encouraged to endure, to wait, to trust the process, to believe that delay is not denial. And because faith is involved, disappointment is often internalized instead of discussed. People blame themselves instead of questioning the system. This creates a quiet gap, not always visible, not always spoken, but deeply felt. A gap between promise and reality, between sacrifice and outcome, between hope and experience. The issue is not that pastors should be poor. The issue is whether the structure serves the many or concentrates benefits in the few. Whether wealth in the church is used to empower members or to elevate leadership. Whether giving produces growth in people or dependency on personalities. These are not simple questions, but they are necessary ones. And this leads us naturally to the next part of the discussion. If wealth is rising at the top and struggle remains at the bottom, what is happening to responsibility, accountability, and growth among the people themselves? Now let us look at the other side of the picture, because this conversation is not complete if we talk only about leaders and ignore the condition of the people. Why do many church members remain poor even after years of faith, prayer, and giving? This is not a question of intelligence or effort. Many believers work hard, many are sincere, many are committed, yet their lives remain largely unchanged. To understand why, we have to look at what they are being taught, and just as importantly, what they are not being taught. In many churches, responsibility has been transferred from the individual to the spiritual realm. Problems that require skills are treated as attacks. Challenges that require planning are treated as enemies. Failure is explained as lack of faith, not lack of preparation. Over time, people are trained to wait instead of build. Prayer becomes the first response and sometimes the only response. Again, prayer is not wrong, but prayer without action creates dependence. When people are not taught how to think, how to plan, how to save, how to learn, how to organize, they remain stuck, even while believing deeply. Another issue is fear. Questioning teachings is often discouraged. Asking practical questions is seen as doubt. Wanting clarity is seen as rebellion. So people learn to silence their thoughts. They obey without understanding. They give without knowing. They follow without knowing the direction. This creates believers who are loyal but not empowered. Faithful but not equipped. Committed but dependent. There is also the problem of spiritualizing poverty. Instead of addressing economic realities, poverty is explained as a curse, a demon, or a generational issue. This sounds spiritual, but it removes responsibility and awareness. If poverty is always spiritual, then learning, planning, and organizing feel unnecessary. Over time, people become emotionally hopeful but practically unprepared. They attend services regularly, but their skills do not improve. Their networks do not grow. Their understanding does not deepen. Their income does not change. Yet they are told to keep believing, keep sowing, and keep waiting. In contrast, when we look at the early church in the book of Acts, faith did not produce passivity. It produced responsibility. People shared resources. Needs were identified. Leaders were accountable. Growth was communal, not individualistic. Today, in many places, faith has become private hope instead of collective strength. Everyone is waiting for a personal miracle, while common problems remain unsolved. This is not because people are weak. It is because they have been trained to look upward instead of inward and outward. Upward for miracles, inward for blame, rarely outward for solutions. The result is a cycle. People give because they hope. They hope because they are desperate. They remain desperate because nothing changes structurally. And the cycle continues quietly. This does not mean faith has failed. It means faith has been narrowed, reduced to expectation instead of empowerment. And this brings us to the next part of the discussion. If both leaders and members are trapped in this system, what role does the Bible actually play? And how different is what is practiced today from what was originally taught? When we read the Bible carefully, especially the early church in the book of Acts, we see something very important. Miracles were present, yes. Healing happened, signs happened, but miracles were never the center of the faith. They followed the message, they did not replace it. The core focus was teaching, community responsibility, and shared life. Believers were not trained to wait endlessly for personal breakthroughs. They were taught to live differently, walk differently, relate differently, and care for one another practically. Faith produced structure, not dependence. Leaders were not treated as untouchable figures. They were accountable to the community. Resources were shared openly. Needs were addressed collectively. Wealth was not used to elevate a few, but to support many. When we move to the book of James, the message becomes even clearer. Exploiting the poor is strongly condemned. Faith without action is called empty. Spiritual language without practical responsibility is challenged directly. The Bible does not celebrate believers who only hope. It affirms believers who act. This contrast is important. Today, in many churches, faith is measured by excitement, attendance, and giving. In the early church, faith was measured by transformed lives, shared responsibility, and visible care for the weak. This does not mean the Bible rejects prosperity or miracles. It means they were never meant to be the foundation. They were outcomes, not goals, tools, not identities. When miracles become the focus, people chase experiences. When prosperity becomes the message, people chase outcomes. But when discipleship becomes the foundation, people grow in wisdom, discipline, and strength. The Bible's emphasis was never on keeping people dependent on leaders. It was on equipping people to stand, serve, and grow. The danger today is not that miracles exist, but that scripture is often reduced to verses that support expectation. This is why the debate matters, because it is not about tradition versus modernity. It is about alignment, whether the church is moving closer to its original foundation. Now we come to the final part of the discussion. Listen carefully, the way forward. If we have seen how miracles attract attention, prosperity is emphasized, but see, wealth rises at the top while struggle remains at the bottom. Members are trained to wait. Why? Instead of act, then the question becomes, what can change? What should the future look like? Africa does not need less Christianity. It does not need fewer churches. It does not need fewer pastors. What it needs is true Christianity, a faith that equips people to live fully in both the spiritual and the practical. A church that focuses not only on miracles, but also on discipleship. Not only on prosperity, but also on responsibility. Not only on promises, but also on preparation. A church where members are taught to develop skills, to organize their communities, to plan, to save, and to act, while still walking in faith. Leaders too must embrace accountability. Wealth should not be a personal reward alone. It should be a tool to empower others. Influence should not be used to dominate, but to serve. Power should not be a display, but a responsibility. Faith should become a partner with action, not a replacement for it. Prayer should coexist with planning. Hope should coexist with preparation. Miracles should complement growth, not replace it. If this is achieved, then giving will be meaningful, not coerced. Obedience will be empowering, not blind. Expectation will be balanced with understanding. Communities will be strengthened, not pacified. Individuals will grow, and poverty will no longer be spiritualized as permanent or inevitable. The future of the African church depends on this balance. If miracles remain central without discipleship, hope will continue to float without foundation. If prosperity is displayed without responsibility, dependency will deepen. But if faith is combined with preparation, prayer with planning, miracles with character, then the church can truly transform lives. Spiritually, economically, and socially, the question each leader and each member must ask is simple but profound. Am I building a system that empowers people, or am I managing expectation? Am I creating dependency, or am I creating strength? Faith is powerful, hope is essential, but transformation requires both. And with that understanding, the conversation comes full circle. Miracles and prosperity can inspire, they can attract attention, they can lift spirits, but lasting change, the kind that shapes nations and communities, comes when faith is joined with action, responsibility, and wisdom. Thank you for listening. God bless you. Don't be misled. Stay grounded in the truth. Comment, share, and subscribe for more videos.